All right, so in this video, we're gonna talk more on the advanced settings of the Gen 4s. Hopefully you've been through some of the basics, have maybe had a little bit of time to get used to it and some of the logic behind it, but now there is so much more that we can do with this display that we really wanna start talking about some of the advanced things and some of the advanced setups of the Gen 4 displays. We're going to start with Layout Manager. So Layout Manager was something that was maybe a little bit cumbersome in the GS2s and the GS3s. The Gen 4s, I don't know that we actually made it any simpler, but we gave it a lot more functionality than what we've ever had before and a lot more options of what you've ever had before to do. So to get to the Layout Manager, we're going to start by clicking this menu button and we're going to go to Applications. And then we are going to scroll down till we find the Layout Manager icon right here. So we'll click on Layout Manager. So there's three buttons on this left-hand side here: Active Sets, Shortcut Bars, which we'll talk about later, and All Run Pages. Okay? We're going to click on All Run Pages, and this will show us all the run pages that have ever been created. Okay, these are not necessarily active run pages. These are maybe run pages from planters, from fertilizer spreaders, from sprayers, or from combines. Anything that we've ever created before will be in this list. To create a new one, we click on this Add New at the bottom. And this brings us to our new Run Page Manager. Okay? We click on Add Module. And when we click on Add Module, it kind of clicks us or sends us back out to the actual menu page, right? But we're in the menu page because we need to select something to enter in that side of, or that portion of the actual screen. So these are all of our mapping modules that we can use on the screen. Anything from a full screen mapping module to just certain sections. So we're going to click on this one right here, and it shows us how that will lay out on the page. We also have this arrow in the middle that will allow us to slide this module to anywhere that we want to on that page. Okay? Now we still have this white section over on this side, which means we can add certain modules over here. So again, we click on the Add Module button. That kicks us back out to the menu applications. We click on Applications here, and let's say that we want to put Auto Tracking Guidance in that section. So as we scroll down, we've got all of our guidance options, but we'll start seeing some of them that look like this, okay? So this is a bar that would stretch across most of the top. Because of the modules that we already have in our Layout Manager, it's telling us that there is not enough space to add this module as well. Okay, so we need to scroll back up and we need to find a module that will fit and give us the information that we're looking for. So I like this one right here, so we'll click on the Add button here. And again, we can slide this around and put it wherever we want. Okay. Now, for the sake of time, we're not going to finish filling up the rest of this module, but you guys get the concept of going back and forth and adding different modules till you get the majority of your screen filled. You do not have to have it completely filled. It's okay if you have white sections that have areas that aren't filled by different layout modules. Now, what we do need to do is we do need to give this page a name. So we'll just call this page the mapping page. We'll click OK at the bottom, and we'll click Save to save this page. Now that has been added to the list of all of our run pages. Okay, if we scroll back up, we'll see the mapping page listed right here that we have created. That does not mean that it is an active page. That just means that it is one of the pages that can be selected now. Okay, so this is again where you would have combine pages, planter pages, or sprayer pages all mixed in together. But because we're talking Harvest Summit and we're talking about harvest pages, we're going to click at the top and we're going to look at our active set. Our active set currently has 4 run pages in it. If we click on that folder there, it will show us the pages that are currently in our active set. If we would like to add a page to our active set, we click on this Add Run Page. And you know what? I want to add that new mapping page I just created. We'll select it here. We'll click OK. We'll click Save to save that, and now you'll see that we have 5 active run pages and not 4. Okay? Again, we could come in here and we could also remove these pages or add them based on what operation we're doing and what we would like to see at any given time. Lastly, in the Layout Manager, I want to talk about the shortcut bars. So by default, this is your shortcut icons that are listed on your bar. At any time, if you don't like an icon that's on here, so we can click this Help button, we can click on Remove, and now that leaves us a white area to add a new module. We simply click on the plus arrow there, and let's go to Applications, and we want to bring a calculator in. Okay, so we click add there. So now we have a calculator right on our edit shortcut bar, which will be on our main shortcut bar from now on. Again, from here, if we exit out, and we'll X out of this page here, you'll see that on our main setup bar at the bottom, we now have a calculator as one of the functions. So the setup bar is completely customizable. Again, we can scroll pages by clicking on the icons at the top. We can swipe from left to right, or see where it says GRC right here, we can click on that screen, right, even though it doesn't look like a button, and this will list out all of the pages that we currently have if we want to jump quickly to one page or not. If we jump to a page, again, this is the mapping page that we created earlier that we did not have completely set up. This is what it looks like if you do have blank areas. It functions just fine. You'll just have a dark area where there's no module at. So in other videos, we talked about the basic setup that we needed to do in the work setup, right? And how it replaced the resource button, the documentation button, and the equipment button, okay? But we actually can go deeper into some of that stuff and really edit and set up the planner and the products the way we want them to be. So from here, again, doesn't look like buttons, but it's all function and we can pick on it. So I'm gonna pick on this planner right here and get into a little bit more of the settings of this planner. So if I click on the planner, and again, I click here, okay, my connection type, my working width, working point, mechanical delays, right, are for section control, whether it has an implement receiver, all of that stuff is set up in that work setup, but as we dive deeper into some of the options, we can see more options. The other thing we have in all of these options is two buttons at the top. One will be a lowercase I, right, that information button, which is really just the operator's manual built into all of the systems, but it's really cool because it's based on what you're currently looking at in your screen. So within the operator's manual, if you have questions about this particular screen, click on the info button and it will take you to that section of the operator's manual that has to do with that screen. The other thing that's up here is the arrow pointing at the dot, okay? That is our advanced setup. When we click on that, you'll see that we get a couple other options here. Some people like those conditions, right? So if we want to document weather while we're spraying, this is where we turn that functionality on, okay? We can come through here and click our temperature and we'll say it's 80 degrees and the wind speed is 3 miles an hour out of the southwest. So we click exit out of here, and again, exit out of here to get back to our main setup. And now you'll see you'll have a details section within your work setup that also controls the conditions. So some other options within the advanced settings of the work setup. I'm gonna go back into this planner again, and you'll see that this planner has sub-tabs listed under it, right? So again, in documentation, right, in a GS2 or GS3, we say you wanna have just the tab that you're working, right? So if that's just seating or if that's just product application in new. It's also very important that we pay attention here that the planner itself does not need a sub-tab. The planner itself is already tied to a task and a task of seating. So we do not wanna add a sub-tab in here that would be seating. It will give us too much documentation. But within that planner, we also are applying a fertilizer or pop-up, so this is where we do want a sub-tab within there to make sure we document not only the seed going into the ground, but the fertilizer going into the ground as well. Both of those tabs will reference us back to our documentation, right? So we said we have a planner, and that planner is putting seed in the ground, so P1197 is that variety. And that planner also had a rate controller, right? And that rate controller is putting down a 1034O. So our planner is set up correct and our documentation is set up correct for this system. Lastly, within our corn and our documentation here, we're gonna click on what says corn. We wanna make sure that the target rate or the RX is set up correctly. If you're going to run a prescription, this is where you need to switch it over to select that prescription to run and not run off of a controller rate. If you are just gonna run a flat rate from the controller from the planner, make sure you have controller rate selected here. So one of the other advanced functions that we get into is more when we get into mapping, right? So how do we see some of those as applied maps, or how do we see some of those rate maps instead of just a blue coverage map? Well, right from our mapping page that we created earlier, we're gonna click on this icon right here. And within this icon, we're gonna click on this layers button that kind of looks like several pieces of paper layered over the top of each other. Once we click on that, it will give us options, okay? Do we wanna see the fertilizer or do we wanna see corn? Well, I wanna see corn at this point. So instead of just corn coverage, I want to see the corn rate. So if I select corn and I select rate, and then again, OK at the bottom, instead of just painting a blue coverage map throughout this as we go, it will actually give me the as applied map of the corn rate or the seeding rate that goes with it. Much better than just straight coverage. So a couple more things we want to talk about that gets into the more advanced settings. We're going to jump back into guidance. And within guidance, again, we talked about these icons at the top. Okay, so the icons at the top, again, the arrow pointing at the dot, gives us some advanced settings. So some auto track optimization that we've seen before. These are kind of where these are at. Again, be careful with these in here. Make sure you maybe keep your IS consultant involved. If you're really getting in and changing settings a lot, you could actually be covering up another problem that we need to address. So just make sure that you are careful in what you're doing in here. And again, we can jump back and monitor that performance of how far we are off on heading or how far we are on track error at that point. The other thing you really need to know about maybe some advanced settings within the guidance system is within a GS2 or GS3, we can only run the guidance lines that were created under that field name. That is not the case with a Gen 4, and that's by design. A lot of times we would get two fields butted up against each other, and they would be two different field names, but yet we'd want to continue with the guidance line from field A into field B. Okay? So that is an option with the Gen 4 displays that can be turned on, that we actually can change field names but continue with that guidance line into the next field. That also means, though, we do need to be careful when we are selecting guidance lines that we make sure that we are selecting them for the correct field and not just what we think is the right field or the right guidance line. So we'll click X to jump out of our guidance lines. So for the advanced settings, we want to end with kind of data movement and some advanced imports and some advanced exports that we can do with the displays. So again, we'll start by clicking on Menu. We will go to Systems, and we will go to File Manager, right? Because this is where we import and export all of our data from. When we click on Export, we have this option now to do a custom export. Okay, so we don't have to just take everything, we can pick and choose now. If we click the next button at the bottom, we can either select all data, which is not what we want. We can also select certain data. Okay, so I only want to export this South 40 field for a customer. So I click on Next, and it is bringing up all of the data that is available for that South 40 field. Well, I want the boundary, and I want the work data. That's all I want to send out to the USB or all I want to export at this time. So I'll click Export here. It's going to load up for me and tell me that data successfully moved to the USB and I am set and ready to exit out. So again, not like the GS2s and GS3s where we had to bring all the data in or all the data out. We have that custom option of what we want to bring in or what we want to bring out. Also remember, when we bring data in to a Gen 4 display, it merges with the data that's currently on the display versus a GS3 that was a replacement. Okay, so now we can actually bring in just certain data sets, add them to what's on the display, and not completely replace everything that was on there. So that was some of the advanced settings with the Gen 4 displays. There's still a lot more that can be done in here, but we felt like those were some of the basics that got guys tied up and kind of really helped you optimize and start utilizing more of that Gen 4